Good afternoon, everyone. Kalla here. Welcome to my live stream. Glad you could make it today. Today it's more Great Ace Attorney, and hopefully we can solve this one. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know who did it and most of how, but it doesn't seem like the court is seeing it my way. So we've got to be jumping in to I've forgotten what the word is. Me talking to the jury. And hello Nick. I think I'm ready to crack the case. Hopefully. So let's go then. The jurors' contentions. I've known that woman for years. She'd never be an accomplice to anything. It's utter nonsense to think these two would ever be conniving with one another. Oh dear, this is most troubling. But surely the waxwork the man stole has nothing to do with the coroner, is it? Oh yeah, I forgot about the coroner being in on it. I forgot that's something we'd learned last time. I have my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much. I've seen no rigorous proof that this waxwork was ever inside the birdcage. It's conjecture. Accusing someone without right evidences is not a proper job, is he? I won't have it. Somewhat unsurprisingly, it seems the introduction of this waxwork model to the proceedings has polarized opinion. Given that its face is obscured and its build in no way resembles that of the victim, I can only applaud my learned friend's temerity at suggesting it as Mr. Asman's body double. I mean, its build isn't that far off. And people were only going to be seeing it from several meters away up in the air as it fell at speed. It didn't really need to be a double. Yes, the applause is deafening. And yes, I know it seems extraordinary. That's the point. That's why I have a strong feeling it's actually a greater clue than anyone yet realizes. What are you thinking, Mr. Naruhodo? Can't explain why at the moment, but I feel as though there's a specific reason why it was used, why it had to be this model. Really? A reason why nothing else would do, you mean? Is it because Mr. Asman was the professor? No, that can't be right, because they hung the professor. Yes, and I'm convinced it's something far more significant than whether or not the model looked like the victim. Well, if that's the case, we must prevent the trial from ending prematurely at all costs. Yes, agreed. I have to find a way out of this. If you are ready, counsel, you may proceed with the summation examination. That was it, summation examination. Yes, my lord. Time to press all the jurors. The defense's rebuttal.
Hold it!
The order of things seem to have changed around here for some reason. I'm a copper, lad. It's a copper's discretion to bend the rules sometimes when needs must. What's wrong with that? Where do I start? I've been working at the yard for 40 odd years. That's even more than I thought. We've only had a Metropolitan Police Service in town for 70 years, you know. Of course, times have changed. The public didn't trust coppers back when I started. It was rough. We had to fight crime, we had to fight to win the public's trust as well, and when we did. Forensic science was in its infancy too, even more than it is now, and she spearheaded the revolution. Dr. Scythe, you mean? That's right. About 10 years ago now it was, when I was still a youngish Bobby on the beat. That's when she started making a name for herself as a top-class coroner. You were youngish from 10 years ago, sir? What, hadn't you already been in the police for 30 years at that point? And now look at her. Head of the forensic investigation team, and a woman no less. Well, you won't hear me complain. It's what we all dreamt of back then, I tell you. Could you tell me without holding that gun in the air? We were all out to uphold justice, lad. Full of him, we were full of him. That's coming across loud and clear. Hold it! But we're only just starting to understand this case. What are you reading there, sir? The man behind those murders on Solar Pond Street was caught in 2 days flat. That's real policing for you. That's really not relevant to this case, is it? You're wrong there. Because it was Dr. Scythe in charge of examining the bodies. And it was evidence arising from her work that led to the arrest of the scoundrel responsible. Oh. That's right. Oh. That woman is at the forefront of this country's fight against crime. The idea that she's somehow involved in this murky business is a load of old tosh. I thought it was up to me to press the jurors, not the other way around. Hold it! Why would you assume that? Well, quite simply because that unsettling swindler has no relationship with the woman, does he? True. As it stands, we don't know of any connection. Oh, gosh, but it would be delightfully romantic if they were to somehow have a mutual interest in the waxwork. Yeah, that would be pretty useful to my case if they did. Yeah, she examined the bodies, yeah. And kind of... That's why we think she was in on it, because we think she switched the waxwork with the actual body. Because she was the one in charge of looking at the body. Romantic? A woman of society such as myself views everything in terms of relationships, you know. Well, you learn something new every day, even if you don't want to. One might wonder about a possible relationship between the defendants and this coroner woman. Or perhaps between the defendants and the handsome prosecutor just there. Well, there is something between the defendants and the prosecutor. They were school friends. This woman may be more astute than I've been giving her credit for. If that's the woman's stance, then perhaps demonstrating some connection between the waxwork and Dr. Scythe would be enough. Yes, I agree. As soon as we have even a whiff of a connection, she'll be the first to know. Hold it! What sort of problems? Let's just say we have run into each other on numerous occasions while I've been performing on the street. Ah, I see. Right, I see. Obviously, artists such as myself cannot appear on stage as we work in close proximity to our audiences. So we perform our great magic in parks, on street corners, and the like. But the police use any excuse to make our lives difficult. I'm gonna go through the rest of the statement and then go through it again and hit that and check that out. Check the policeman out. So give me a sec. Sometimes they even cook up a story to extort monies from the poor. Well, that's definitely not right. Yes, and it's why I say that if you trust the police, you will have trouble. But here you are, claiming this waxwork model was stolen to star in an illusionary spectacular. The idea is so wild, I think I will take my chances and believe the authorities on this occasion. This is how the public at large view Scotland Yard, is it? Our own police force in Tokyo is not even 20 years old yet, is it? Perhaps we should view what's happened here in London as a measure of what may happen at home. Yes, like a Scotland Yard stick. Oof. Oh dear. I wonder how a policeman would feel listening to the way this juror speaks about the force. I'm sure he'd have a word or two to say in response. So let's go do that again.
Hold it! Not in my day.
Not in my day.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to say in response to that, Mr. Ottermole? Who are you calling a mass murderer? Ah, sorry, my mistake. I got confused because I heard you look like him. I don't look anything like the man. You want to be locked up, sonny? Thanks, Mr. Sholmes. Perhaps we could move on. I was really wondering if you had something you wanted to add in response to what juror number 3 just said. That looks dangerous. Sir, could you not? And clearly you do. Back in my day, back in the good old days, it wasn't like this. What was it like, sir? We worked our fingers to the bone to earn the public's trust, we did. By Jove, we earned it. People respected us back then. Respected you? No one would have called a coroner into question in them days. A coroner's report was the hallmark of an investigation done right. Especially when Dr. Courtney Stevens put her name to it. Dr. Courtney Stevens? Who's...
Hold it!
We need the history there. She was the best of the best, and the apple of the force's eye. Hold on a minute. What are you talking about? Who's Courtney Stevens? Ah, sorry. Got a bit carried away there. Stevens is Dr. Syed's maiden name. Her maiden name? So that was before she was married. Of course, yeah. Silly, mate. It's Scythe now, isn't it? Stevens. I'm sure I've seen that name somewhere recently. People? Nope. There's no Stevens up here. The newspaper? Probably not. Autopsy report. No. Science trophy? Doesn't say. The killer's autopsy report. Courtney Stevens. We have seen this recently. She was the one who confirmed that the professor was dead. Anyway, the point is, those were the great days of policing, not like now. Sorry to interrupt, sir. But do you think you could change your statement to include that name? Well, yes, I don't see why not. She was Courtney Stevens back when I knew her, of course, a legendary coroner even then. So we definitely need to pit that against juror number 2. But first we're going to press jurors 4 and 5.
Hold it!
But yeah, she confirmed his death, and Drebber said he saw the man rise from his own grave. You know? But you claimed the whole instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a trick. I did, but there's more than one way to pull a rabbit out of a hat, isn't there? Click on typewriter. Yes. Sorry? I grant you, given this cage appeared from amidst an explosion, there'd have been no need to use a real person. But if a waxwork had been used, the culprit could at least have had the decency to make it look like the victim. I'm not sure exactly how much criminals are governed by decency. The point is, if you're going to make a claim about that waxwork being inside the birdcage, you need to give us some evidence. Without that, it's just not science. I have evidence. I suppose we should expect nothing less than a logical argument from a fellow of the Royal Society. But that perhaps means his mind could be changed if he managed to present suitable evidence. Evidence that the Professor Waxwork was inside that birdcage. Can I produce that or not? I have evidence. Actually, I have something I'd like you to see, sir. Yeah, the glass shard, exactly. Oh. I must warn you that I firmly believe it's only wise to trust men in white coats. You're not even wearing a white coat, sir. So given your jet black outfit, I don't mind admitting to a sense of trepidation here. So you don't trust anyone in black? Looking in the mirror must be very trying. I do have some evidence that proves the waxwork was inside that birdcage, namely... Nope, wrong button.
Take that!
What's that? A piece of glass? Though it's unusually thick for glass. Yes, it's a piece of broken glass that we found inside the jacket on the waxwork. As you say, it's not ordinary glass though, it's very thick and clearly made for extra strength. Much like the special glass that was developed for the construction of the Crystal Tower. The Crystal Tower! Holy smoke! Exactly, the centerpiece of the Great Exhibition where the very incident we're talking about took place. On the day in question, the birdcage fell from above and smashed through a window of that special glass. From whence this small piece originated, is that it? Precisely. So, what do you say? Now that clear evidence is in support of the assertion has been placed before you. Well, as I said, I only trust men in white coats as a rule. However, when the reasoning is sound, it's fair to say colour shouldn't come into it. In light of what you've shown me here, yes, I feel obliged to change my position on the matter. In that case, juror number 4, you will amend your statement now, please. The presence of that piece of glass leaves me in little doubt that the waxwork was indeed inside that birdcage. Alright. Corn typewriter.
Hold it!
I've got to ask, why have you brought that corn into court with you? Colonel Cobb, he's been growing back on the farm. Picked him off on me way into town. He's a proper nibbler, he is. Yes, the nibbling seems to be taking quite a while. Maybe it could wait until after the trial? Oh, I don't like the sound of that. You need colonels at times like these. Whenever I have something big to decide, the colonels always point me in the right direction, see? You're talking about your cob of corn? Nibble, nobble, guilty, bobble, nibble, not guilty, out. 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 Yes, nice wordplay with the colonels, yes. Perhaps it's akin to fortune telling with flower petals like people do back home. So Professor Harebrain's fate is to be decided by a cob of corn. Could you not at least wait until we've had more time to find the truth before deciding on the defendant's guilt? Ew, I don't know about that. Me tum's awfully full already. Amazing. Oh dear. Pun Central. It's Pun Central. Those lines weren't easy. It was close to tongue twistery. I know it seems a little far-fetched to think that the waxwork model of the professor was in that birdcage. It's not far-fetched, it's the truth. But on the other hand, it explains a lot. If there really is a reason why that particular waxwork had to be used as Mr. Asman's double, we must do everything we can to make the jurors understand it. The truth is, I'm not sure that's the key to this, but it's the most puzzling part of it too. In that case, you should see what additional information you can glean whilst trying to change the jurors' minds. If you can read a book while eating a rice cracker, Mr. Naruhodo, I'm sure you can do this. Right, yes. Right, so now we're pitting him against her. Those two statements clearly contradict each other. Good gracious! To whose statements do you refer, counsel? So, juror number 2. Oh, gosh! What can I do for you? I presume that you heard what juror number 6 said in his statement. It's brought to light the maiden name of the coroner, Dr. Scythe, which in turn has revealed a connection that wasn't apparent before. Well, naturally, as a woman of society, I find such connections and relationships irresistible. But oh, Collie, I'm afraid I fail to see what you mean. Dr. Scythe's maiden name is Stevens, and through that name, the coroner is very definitely linked to the waxwork of the killer. Incidentally, I wonder if Dr. Scythe had some kind of relationship with the professor and helped him get away by declaring him dead when he wasn't. And maybe Drebber is the professor. Maybe the guy who reported the professor rising from his grave actually is the professor himself. And they're still working together. I don't know. I am throwing theories at the wall. The defense has evidence to prove it. My goodness, evidence, you say? How utterly enthralling. Counsel, the court cannot overlook that last remark. I very much hope there is substance to your claim. Of course, my lord. I would ask the court to look at this. The evidence that clearly links Dr. Scythe to the mass murderer known as the Professor. The killer's autopsy report.
Take that!
I have here a certain autopsy report from 10 years ago. A 10-year-old autopsy report? What relevance does that have? It is, of course, from the autopsy of the person portrayed in the waxwork. The killer known as the Professor. The Professor's... Well, that man was a capital offender, so... That's right, this is the certification of death that was drawn up after the convict's execution. Alright, what's your theory, Nick? She took a bribe and made it so that he could escape his final resting place and Drebber witnessed it, and now they're all in on it together. Yeah, maybe. The identity of the killer was never made public, so the report gives few details. But what's important is the name of the coroner that wrote it. Courtney Stevens. Oh my, Courtney Stevens? Strike a light! It appears that the professor's autopsy was conducted by Dr. Scythe 10 years ago. And a few days ago, Mr. Drebber very deliberately stole the waxwork of the professor from Madame Two-Spells. A waxwork that doesn't in fact resemble the victim, Mr. Asman, at all. And do you suppose there's some unsavory relationship between those events? I mean, since they were trying to conceal the head of it, maybe they were trying to make sure that the professor's identity would never be known. Absolutely, I'm sure of it. There's no doubt in my mind that the Professor case is at the heart of a link we have yet to uncover between Dr. Courtney Scythe and Mr. Enoch Drebber. Hidden links, mysterious connections, secret relationships. This is all most extraordinary. We're surely obliged now to explore this further. That's one. We got one. Quite right. We can't let this trial come to an end now. Not while there's this cloud of suspicion hanging over the yard's best coroner. It wasn't like this back in my day, but we're still here to uphold justice in the end. We got two. It's the Professor. That's what links this frightful swindler and the coroner. I think we could pit these two against each other. Oh, I forgot that juror number 6 wasn't at the end. If our yard coroner's under suspicion, then we're not done here yet, are we? Clearly. Right. So we've got this utter nonsense to think those two would ever be conniving with one another. I have my own problems with members of the police, but we dealt with that one already, so I think if we pit this, some evidence, versus A, you don't have evidence.
Objection.
Those two statements clearly contradict each other. Good gracious, to whose statements do you refer, counsel? If you could put down your corn for a moment, juror number 5. Oh, you mean me? You've pointed out that it's wrong to make an accusation without evidence. But the accusation that the waxwork model was inside the second birdcage on the day in question is not without supporting evidence, as the defense demonstrated to the juror sitting beside you. Oh, is that right? Would it be fair to say you didn't follow the argument? I don't understand much beside Colonel Cobb, to be honest. Of course you don't. Also, why on earth is a kid that young on the jury in the first place? I have questions. If I could interject here. Please do, sir. Now that this assertion of yours about the waxwork has been backed up by some solid evidence, it would be wrong of me, as a man of science, not to pursue the matter further. Alright, balance the scales. Well, me too then. Sorry? If this brainy gentleman says he's right, then he must be. See, I wouldn't dream of going against Colonel Cobb or anyone who's got stuff in between the ears. Alright. Leaning to our side, I believe we can continue then. Success, if you can call it that. Thank you, counsel. That will do. As a result of the summation examination, the jury's overall leaning has changed. 2 jurors now call guilty against 4 who call not guilty. Accordingly, the court has failed to reach a consensus at this time, and the trial must continue. We did it! Oh, well done, Mr. Naruhodo! Another wonderful victory! A waxwork of the despicable professor, used as a body double for the victim in this quite extraordinary case. I must say it's extremely hard to believe the assertion could possibly be true. However, it would appear that it does at least warrant further investigation. It's the waxwork of the professor that links Mr. Drebber and Dr. Scythe. And I'm convinced that there's a special significance to that link. I don't know what you're hoping to prove, lad, I really don't. The truth, sir, by using evidence and testimony. If the court is to delve deeper into the alleged involvement of the waxwork in this case, then the prosecution calls for the owner of the model to be summoned as a witness. The owner? Madame Two Spells. I really thought that Lord Van Zieks would object to this whole line of inquiry. Very well, I concur. Hey, Van Zieks really wants us to prove the innocence of his friend, I'm pretty sure. He's not going to make it easy for us, but I'm pretty sure he wants his friend's innocence proved. Make arrangements with Madame Two Spells to appear as a witness with immediate effect. Listen carefully, my learned friend. Oh, yes? You should know that you're on the brink of opening Pandora's box. I mean, also, Van Zieks is very interested in this whole professor angle, after all. The court shall now adjourn for 45 minutes. During that time, the prosecution will summon the new witness and prepare her for taking the stand. Madame Twosbells, yes. I shall see to it at once, my lord. To be continued. Yes, I would very much like to save, yes. At least we're through a section, which means we should get all our lives back, right? 24th of October, 11:53 AM. The Old Bailey, Defendant's Antechamber. Ah, the Knight Errant himself! Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask. What on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What's this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Who even is he? Ah, of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, that sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies. Ha 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 ha! As it turns out, Lord Van Zieks is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realized, isn't he? Yes, how true. He's a great friend from university in the dock. And now a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man. You make it sound deliberate. I mean, it was deliberate, just not on my case. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Oh yes? In what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Trevor, Dr. Scythe and Lord Van Zieks. It seems that everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow. Yes! In fact, I alone am not a member of the set. And though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone with no intersection to any other. Who do we think this excuse me is? Dr. Scythe. Let's go with Dr. Scythe. Excuse me. It is! It was right! Dr. Scythe! Ah, Courtney Scythe, née Stevens. Good day to you. Hello, Sholmes. That was very shrewd of you. What in particular, pray? You requested that 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me. To think it's been 10 years. 10 years in the laboratory wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. The policeman on the jury has a lot to say about you as it happens, Dr. Scythe. And I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. Hey, don't tell her that! I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart? The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor's case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking that you'll get any information about it out of me. But attempting to hide the truth, that's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. I have no regrets, none at all. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. Right, taking your bath might help with that smell, mightn't it? I don't know, maybe she likes smelling of corpses and disinfectant, though. She mentioned it too, this Pandora's box. Whatever does it all mean? There's really no cause for concern. I assure you, when the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent, whether you like it to or not. Huh? Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits. I think maybe you're enjoying yourself a little too much. Ah, yes. One word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. Alright, I understand. Thank you. Oh, Faust the Eighth from Shaman King. Yeah, I can see the resemblance. Potentially with the Professor as her Eliza. Or Drebber. Good, I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing at that as you gnaw away at the truth. What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. It's time for the final chapter, then. I'm determined to find the truth. No matter what. "24th of October, 12:40 p.m. The Old Bailey courtroom. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue? The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready. As the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. This trial has certainly defied all expectation, as seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord. So then, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zieks. My lord? Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Two Spells? Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak and ready to be summoned. Very well. Bring in the witness. At once, my lord. Bailiff, show Madame Two Spells to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Scythe. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. Yeah, she's probably she's probably brought the cauldron of boiling wax with her, right? And I feel like she'll threaten me specifically. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present it's all we have to go on. Oh, she appears to be making Shim's waxwork. State your name and occupation for the court, please. What was my voice for Madame Two Spells again? My name is Madame Esmeralda Two Spells. I'm a waxwork artisan. That's not it, but we'll get there eventually. And the proprietress of the Madame Two Spells Museum of Waxwork. That's closer, there we go. You will have to pardon me for working as I testify. My new exhibit must open very soon. Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are two of them in the world. Oh my! What expression is she carving onto that face? A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this? Oui, that is true. At first we believed it had been kidnapped. A waxwork model kidnapped? Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit. However, according to what I have been told outside of the courtroom, that was not the true reason. I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim. At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Odi Asman. But of course, I know him well. He is a part of my odious personages exhibit. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all. Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar. Are you suggesting that we should see now the demasked visage of the professor? I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock. Ah, that's a serious key. This is absurd. Pardon? I don't know what face you've carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask. But clearly it won't be that of the actual killer. Indeed. The man's identity was never made public after all. The trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that the repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information. Quel dommage. And I don't know what that means because my French is not that good. It would seem you are unaware of the two spells' principles. What principles? The family two spells has always prided itself on sculpting its models à la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Et voilà, our principles. What a shame. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. There is a well-known legend about the two spells waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. A member of the two spells family is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. I believe the queen's face was carved in the minutes following her death, actually at the guillotine site. You are correct. The model is on display still today in the House of Horrors. We two spells will stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects. Dear me, a somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose. It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations. Do you mean to say that beneath that mask? Oui, the true visage of the killer is there. This is ludicrous. It's out of the question. The professor's... Excuse me. Wow. Oh, what a pity. The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Two-Spell's special exhibit remains extremely popular even today. The killer emerging from his own grave, it is a sight to behold. He should come. I mean, we can kind of see it here, but... I think, Madame, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on this matter. You will explain every detail of this macabre model, and your personal involvement in its creation. With pleasure. The Professor Waxwork. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumour that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with Truspell's family principles. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mould for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. As dawn approached, I was worried that I could be discovered. The gravedigger? The man sanctioned this? Oui. I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family is celebrated for. Nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did it do, huh? So you truly saw it? The face of that monster. Naturally, I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret. But two spells would not be two spells if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculptures. I don't believe this. I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madame. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave. The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumours in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. The special exhibit was based upon the picture in this article. Oh, okay. So Mr. Asman is the one who drew that picture. Look at that. Oh, Asman. Right there. It was the most detailed account of what happened, as reported by the eyewitness who saw it. The 10-year-old article has been entered into the court record. A newspaper article recounting the tale of an eyewitness to the alleged resurrection of the professor from his grave on the night of his execution. Wait, on the night of his execution? Wasn't two spells there looking at his face on the night of his execution? Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. Right, let's have a proper look at that. What's the bell masks blame for the great play? The great stink. Hey look, Charles Darwin. Mad sheep rampage. Unexplained phenomenon grips Oxfordshire region. Locals reported a remarkable circumstance in which folded sheep were seized with a sudden fright and leapt. I wish I could read that article. I want to read the article on the Mad Sheep Rampage. But yeah, that's Mr. Asman's signature. Because, you know, we have that here. The public enjoy absurdity, monsieur. That is why I have reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from that exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident in the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? Can we investigate that next, please? What, the Mad Sheep Rampage? I don't know. It's a 10-year-old case. I doubt there's any sheep witnesses to it left. That is correct. The professor you see before you here. Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination. This waxwork links Strebber to Dr. Scythe. And there has to be some reason for that, which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Scythe and Drebber were in on this crime together. And that rumor would be a 10-year-old tale now, but one that no Londoner would ever forget. Ah, right. I know just what you're talking about, I think. Of course. It couldn't be anything else. Yes, that story will never disappear. The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead. That is the central attraction of my House of Horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this. It was in Lowgate Cemetery behind the prison, in the dead of night after the execution of the killer. The interred professor slid back the stone slab covering his tomb and emerged from his grave. A young man who witnessed this felt a scream welling up inside him. But an instant later, he heard an ear-splitting gunshot from over his shoulder. The bullet struck the emerging corpse, and he fell motionless once more. The scream finally found its way from the mouth of the young witness, who turned and ran for his life. Wait, someone shot the zombie? The corpse climbed out of his own grave? And then somebody shot him? Who? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor. Perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. The good people of London, they love stories like this. That is why it was in every newspaper across the capital. But was it just a story? I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today at your museum, isn't it? Well, yeah. But still, if it was the same night that he was interred, then we know that two spells was there examining his face. Oui, the special exhibit was modelled on that very illustration. For a while afterwards, the contents of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Isn't there a poison in the correct dose that slows down your heart rate so you appear dead? Yeah, I'm pretty sure so. I mean, I don't know if it actually exists in real life, but I know that sort of thing gets used in fiction a lot. Madame, might I say something? Please, go ahead, mademoiselle. When something is described as a rumour, it doesn't necessarily mean it's entirely made up. I believe that often rumours contain elements of the truth. Ah, I see that people from the East can be just as astute as the people of Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? I mean, we only have Dr. Courtney Stevens' word on that. It is not possible for the dead to come back to life. Sorry? 10 years ago, I was there in Lowgate Cemetery. After the criminal known as the Professor was killed by hanging, I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interred. So I can assure you, the man was dead. I see. It would certainly appear that the condemned man suffered the intended fate.
Hold it!
Is that true of every waxwork in your museum, then? It is, assuming the subject is dead, of course. live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? I guess letters requesting that they be immortalized in wax. When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Comme ça. No! My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor, and for some criminals a symbol of status even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. And it is thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the Professor. Whose form you claim to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse. There are no exceptions to the principles of two spells. Yeah, the living forever part, right? Surely that's illegal, isn't it? I don't think she cares. It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. It had nothing to do with the money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'etre of the Two Spells Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the Professor. Yeah, a man dies when he's forgotten that. Just like, yeah, just like the, so, but, what was it? A man is still alive as long as his name is spoken. Which I don't remember where that comes from. Do you realise what you're saying? The Professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now that the truth about that special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close. Of course it will, as will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madame. That could be just another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think. Don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the Professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse? Oui, exactement. It was Terry Pratchett. I thought it was. I thought it was Pratchett, but I wasn't certain. Yeah, it's from... which... I can't remember which Discworld book it is. The one with the clacks, I think. I mean, the clacks is in a lot of them, but... Going postal! Ah, yes, that'll be it. The post, not the clacks. Well, I mean, the clacks was relevant as well. You were there longer than you expected to be? I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night I was alone, and as a consequence I missed my preferred window of time. What do you mean? When I take the impression of the visage of a cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after death. Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant? I assume it's related to rigor mortis. I was right. It is because of rigor mortis. A wriggly mortis? It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And then from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one. As the mademoiselle says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw. I see, so that's why you wait. Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work. It's getting hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses. I wonder if that's information the court's just heard from Madame Two-Spells. It must be significant, so we're going to pursue it. The information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see. Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave. Susato! You're punning too? You're punning too? This is no time for jokes, Miss Susato. Madame, kindly amend your testimony as discussed. Bien sûr. Yeah. It's before the onset of rigor mortis.
Hold it!
Rigor mortis being the phenomenon you described whereby the corpse becomes stiff after death? I think you said it starts at the jaw about 3 hours post-death, is that right? Oui, c'est ça. Of course, the exact duration depends a little on the season. I didn't realise a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject. No, it is only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine. Well, I had no idea about it. But maybe I won't admit to my ignorance about forensic science. I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you'd like. I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them. Oh dear. I'll do my very best.
Hold it!
You say that dawn was approaching? What was the time of day then, approximately? Well, I could not say. But when I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible. The execution took place on the 17th of June, which had the earliest sunrise of that year. Indeed it did. First light would have been around 4:40 in the morning. That really is early. What were they doing hanging a man that late at night? The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in a half hour. It was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry. Is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now too? How do they still know that time? I assume it's a similar sort of time each summer. You certainly appear to go to extraordinary lengths for your work, madame. I wonder, is what you said particularly significant? Yeah, it's significant. It's always significant. Madame, those details about how long it took you to complete the sculpture and the early sunrise, could you include them in your testimony? I believe they may be significant. Of course, if you would like me to. You're quite right, Mr. Naruhodo. It is intriguing. A sunrise at 4 in the morning would be absolutely unimaginable at home, wouldn't it? That's not quite what I meant by significant. Kindly amend your formal testimony then, madame. With pleasure, my lord. I hurried to finish my work in the half hour before sunrise. Then I left as soon as the corpse was interred.
Hold it!
Did you have reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something? Welcome back, Nick. I had paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area. Couldn't you just have paid off the warden too, then? I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret, huh? The sunrise was 4:40 AM that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting work. Oui, that must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding. So that's all I have to go on. What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo? For some reason, Dr. Scythe went along with Drebber's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the Professor is the only other thing we know of that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow. In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the drawers are sure to revert their leanings and the trial will be over. She didn't sculpt the model in 40 minutes. She made a cast of his face in 40 minutes. I guess she must have done the sculpting later, or rather casting, and then probably a bit of sculpting to clean it up. I agree, but interestingly, uncovering what the Professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting anyway. Yes, as do I. After all, he has a profound connection to the Professor as well. Okay. It's based on a rumour at the Shock Society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse. He enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mould for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. It took a very long time because it was before the onset of rigor mortis. And you hurried to finish your work in the half hour before sunrise and left as soon as the corpse was interred. Okay, so the evidence I have. A 10-year-old article. Yeah. So the rising from the grave happened on the night of the execution, and so did the casting of the face. Which means that this rising from the grave has to have happened before Madame Two Spells saw the body. Because this is clearly at night. I mean, unless this is the following night. Given that if it was 4 AM and before the onset of rigor mortis, then he would have been executed around like 2 AM. And I guess you could have counted that as the same as that day. So I guess it could have been the following night. Wait. Oh, we can't see the date on the top of the newspaper. Monday, June something. The killer's autopsy report. Ah! Death by hanging confirmed at midnight. So that's the thing. If he died... if he was confirmed dead at midnight, then shouldn't rigor mortis have started to set in by 4 AM? So let's go with that.
Objection!
Madame Two Spells. I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the Professor following his execution at the gallows. And is that a problem? I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradicts one another. Kui? Kui? No, that's not how you pronounce that. Whoops. Kui? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? According to her testimony, Madame Tisfels was creating her wax impression just before dawn. And at that time, rigor mortis had not yet set in. Qua. Okay. Thank you, Nick. Yeah. Meaning what? I did know the meaning, I just forgot how to say it. Yeah, at the time, rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, madame? You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he cannot have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Syed's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No. If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have set in. Oui, yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff. In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
So he did rise from his own grave and got shot back into it. No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. Yeah, that's because it's not a mistake, it was deliberate. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible! Order, order! Council, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Scythe, but you also implicate members of the staff at Berkeley Prison where the execution took place. By heck! Extraordinary! Not in my day! My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did, of course he did. I moved the man's limped jaw with my own hands. There is no... Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night. Council, present the evidence at once. The evidence allegedly explains what really happened the night of the professor's execution. Oof. It's gonna be the article, right?
Take that!
What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. You're suggesting that it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool, that's simply a rumour published by the gutter press. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened. My word, yes indeed. Mais oui, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
Of course there was a witness, the story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up. And in any case, this was 10 years ago now, there would surely be no hope of finding him.
Objection!
Actually, I know exactly who it is. On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well. What? Are you suggesting, Council, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place? Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say he's right here before my very eyes. You will substantiate your latest claim now, then, Council. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago? Drebber, it literally says so in that article.
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber. Drebber? The previous witness? The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, a young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber. Order! 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 Surely not, Council. Drebber was there in Lowgate Cemetery? Maybe he wasn't there completely by accident. Maybe he was there to pick up the resurrected professor. What is all this talk about Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Tuspel doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, Madame. To your situation as well, in fact. What situation? The theft of the Professor Waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. No! But that would mean... Madame Tuspels. It would appear you know the name Enoch Drebber. Oui, yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past. What? Oh my! Good gracious. Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know. Yes, yes, of course. The story of the young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper. The Daily Circus. It is a paper from which comes the article that I have already shown the court. You're saying that his full name was only publicised in that article? Goodness me, yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms. Unbelievable. When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my House of Horrors, whether it was the truth or not. I see. So you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt a waxwork of the man, did you? Exactement. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork. And since that time it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery. £5 was a pretty reasonable sum in those days as well. I can imagine being a poor student and going, yeah, sure, I'll take £5 to model for your waxwork. So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he'd witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote. that was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today. Even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and its face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? I mean, also, I don't think the waxwork had its head on while it was being used as a double, did it? Because the head was stuck in the other balloon. I don't know. Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Asman, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated Dr. Scythe would have noticed immediately. And yet she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor, is that what you're saying? Dr. Scythe put her name on a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Oh, you think they used the waxwork... So, Drebber used the waxwork of the professor to basically force Dr. Scythe into being an accomplice. With it being the waxwork of the professor was basically just a way of saying, I know what you did. Right? Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. Ah. My lord, this court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defence is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected. But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case? What's Drebber's motive to kill Asman? It's got to be related to the fact that... Drebber's motive to kill Asman is probably that he was the one involved in the one article that gave Drebber's... that actually gave Drebber's name, which probably caused him to become a laughingstock. And so it's revenge for messing up his life or something like that. Which he only knew because of, basically, I think when he saw Asman sign his name to the contract, he realised it was the same man. She told us so herself, didn't she? Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart? The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago. And surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped. But Lord Van Zieks, the missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office.
Objection!
The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes! Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together. Order, order, order! Very well, I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect addressed to Dr. Scythe of the Forensic Investigation Team. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders. Alright then, Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe. Van Zieks is going to take a bit of heat for that, but he really, really wants to know who the professor was. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away, I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Oh, Madame Two Spells is still on the stand as well. Before we get into this one, I need some more water, so I will be right back. Have returned. Thank you for your attendance at such short notice, Dr. Scythe. I'm disappointed in you, Lord Van Zieks. You completely betrayed the agreed policy of both Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office. Betrayal is not in my nature, as long as the truth isn't compromised. If there's even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter whom it concerns or disgruntles, I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his salt. And Mr. Drabber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Dr. Scythe, as the investigating coroner, you were the first on scene to examine the victim's body. It is the belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime. And where's your evidence? At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue. What are you talking about? I'm talking, of course, about the waxwork. This model of the killer known as the Professor, who was sentenced to death 10 years ago. You don't need to tell me. I witnessed the man's execution with my own eyes and officially pronounced him dead. Yeah, and you lied about that. That remains to be seen. Is that so? According to newspaper reports from the time, on the night following his execution, the killer came back to life. Don't waste my time. And the sole witness to that mysterious event was you, Mr. Drabble, wasn't it? If what you saw in the graveyard that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Scythe's. A secret so profound it could compel the coroner to agree to collaborate in your evil scheme, in fact. Mr. Drabber, tell the court. Tell everyone the truth of what you saw that night in Lowgate Cemetery. So he was the student who saw it. You can see the resemblance, actually, can't you? With the man in Madame Two-Spells, I mean. Surely he's not going to claim that's what he really saw, especially not after all these years. He was a research student at the University of London, was he? And a bit too clever for his own good, if you ask me. What an interesting twist. When at the time, not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are, 10 years later, and suddenly my story matters. And in a court of law, too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes. Let's be frank. I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth. There's something going on between them. So, Mr. Drabber, your testimony, please, about the events of that night 10 years ago. You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled across in Lowgate Cemetery. I mean, she's either not amused or she was sort of nodding her assent to him actually telling it. Sort of. Yes, of course, as you wish. In the cemetery 10 years earlier. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say. Yes, the illustration in that newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night. But thinking back now, I realize that I never actually saw the Professor. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model of me from wax. Then I gave up my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. See? I told you what his motive was! I told you what his motive was! I was right! I was right! He does hold Asman accountable. Wait a minute, you're claiming you didn't actually see the professor now? Of course. You'd have to have a screw loose if you believed a corpse could come back from the dead. Well, that's because he wasn't dead in the first place. But, so you're saying this article is not worth the paper it's printed on? I think that would describe it perfectly, yes. If the details in the article aren't true, it nullifies your argument as for why Mr. Drebber and Dr. Syed would have been working together. Yeah, but it does give Drebber a motive. And motives are very important. So he's discrediting himself to cripple my argument? Tell me, witness. You claim to have been in the cemetery on some auxiliary business. Can you elaborate? That's right. Grave robbing, to be precise. Yep, because you're a scientist. In that sort of time. I assume you were a biology scientist. Grave robbing was rife those days, right? As you know, Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Berkeley Prison. So among students of the university, it had a reputation for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. Of course, I never laid a finger on any valuables buried with the dead. So you were one of the so-called resurrectionists, a particularly unpleasant scourge on society. Actually, my fellows and I went by another name, the repurposers. That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. Yeah. Keep showing us your motive. I see. Out of interest, who drew the illustration for this article? Ah, yes, that was the reporter who exposed me. He sketched that right in front of me as I described the scene. Yeah! Motive! Obviously, as time ticked on, I bitterly regretted what I'd done. Claiming to have seen something I never truly saw. Foolish. Very foolish. Well, counsel for the defense, you may proceed to the cross-examination now. Help once, my lord. Yeah, exactly that, Nick. I mean, obviously I don't have that information from historical documents. I have it from historically based fiction, but still. I assume it actually happened as well. press all the things.
Hold it!
By moonlighting, you mean grave robbing, do you? Yes, he was moonlighting as a grave robber. Surely you only need to look at the graveyard scene and my appearance to gauge the answer to that. A lantern and spade. But who on earth would want to buy a dead body? Biology students. And, medicine students. Any major hospital. A hospital? In order to better understand the human body, the study of anatomy is crucial to medical science. But there isn't a hospital in the world that has enough specimens to work with. Though obviously they can't openly express an interest in obtaining more by dubious means. As aspiring scientists, we young research students had no money to work with, as I'm sure you can imagine. So we made surreptitious arrangements with a hospital via some of our medical student acquaintances. We would never take anything of value from the graves. This was all for the furtherance of science, you see. That's what we all told ourselves every time we stole into the graveyard at night, spade in hand. You realise body snatching is a serious crime. If you were caught, you could expect the gravest of consequences. Heh, grave. We students were caught between the hammer and the anvil. We needed funds for research. Professor Harebrained said exactly the same. I'm quite speechless at the apparent levity with which you revealed this abhorrent behaviour. Well, if you wanted to know why I was there at Lowgate Cemetery, that's the reason. But I never expected it to end the way it did. That I regret to this day.
Hold it!
A strange happening at Lowgate Cemetery, which you now deny. Not entirely. I ran to fetch the police at the time, you know. I was shaking like a leaf. But they didn't believe a word of it. In fact, I was very nearly arrested myself. So you went to the papers instead? I started big with the London News, but unsurprisingly, they didn't want to know either. In the end, though, it was reporters from the gossip rags, the gutter press, that came to get my story. And it spread like the plague through the capital as gossip-hungry Londoners lapped up the tale. The story was in every single paper at the time, with the exception of some broadsheets. And yet only 2 or 3 of them actually interviewed me personally. Most of the accounts turned out to be very interpretive ghost stories. What about the article in the Daily Circus? That particular journalist found me at my dormitory. I don't know how, but he had discovered my name. So I recounted to him exactly what had happened that night. And from your description, he drew this illustration? Precisely. That's how I learned that the condemned man was the infamous professor. Because the reporter told me so. I had no idea myself, you see. Newspaper reporters are wont to snoop around in matters that don't concern them. So the scene portrayed in the illustration is accurate, then? Well...
Hold it!
What are you talking about? I think I explained already, didn't I? Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Berkeley Prison. so it was renowned among us students at the university for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. I mean, also the bodies of convicts would be quite useful things to rob, because less people are likely to miss them. For some absurd reason, I was scared of the graveyard at night, and as a result, only too willing to believe that nonsense about the dead coming back to life. But you said you actually saw it! I said what I'd seen in my mind's eye. After all, resurrection is impossible, isn't it? You'd have to be unhinged to think otherwise. Unless, of course, you have some evidence that proves I encountered the professor that night. I don't know. Is there any material evidence that could show he really did see the professor? Is there? The camera. The camera. Yes. If we have anything at all, Mr. Naruhodo, you know I need to present it against that irritatingly backtracking statement of his. The point is that that night was a pivotal moment in my life. We'll get back to that, I think.
Hold it!
That young woman being Madame Two-Spells, of course. Well, I mean, I think the blood on the camera is probably more relevant. Because if he was close enough to the resurrected professor when the resurrected professor got shot, that blood that's on the camera could be from the professor. Assuming that the camera that's around the waxwork's neck is the original camera. Precisely. I must say, I didn't expect to run into her again like this 10 years later. As I have explained, I went by the name published in the article and, comme ça, I found the man. Yes, the article in the Daily Circus, I think you said. I was a poor student with barely a penny to my name at the time. And the young lady put £5 in front of me. So you readily consented to having a waxwork of yourself made and gave permission for it to be put on display. I did. I should sell what little I had to sell, I concluded. Ah, oui, I remember now. I purchased something else from you that day, n'est-ce pas? She did buy the camera! It's the actual camera! Did you? I can't say I remember. What was it, madame? His camera. Ah! Oh, yes. I made a point of taking it with me whenever I made an excursion to any cemetery. You took a camera with you, sir? To what end? To photograph the ghosts. If you saw them, right? To record the details of the bodies I disinterred. But I had no intention of ever visiting a graveyard again after that night, so I sold it. I see. But I still have it, monsieur. It is part of the special exhibit in my House of Horrors. I am very meticulous about such details. It is the Two-Spells way. It would seem then that this is the very camera Mr. Drebber took with him to Lowgate Cemetery on the night in question. Yes, interesting. The details of the camera have been updated in the court record. The actual camera that Mr. Drebber had within in the cemetery 10 years ago. Okay, so now we can present it to that other statement. I wouldn't have been able to do it until I'd got through that one. And I'm going to press his motive. This article, you mean, published in the Daily Circus? Yes, someone informed the Dean that it was my name that appeared in the article, and carelessly let slip that night after night I was digging up graves. Hardly a model student, you might say. The university's reputation was execrably defiled, and I was expelled as a result. Mon Dieu, I had no idea. And having been run out of university, you found employment in a somewhat specialist trade. You combined your knowledge of science with knowledge of stage magic to create various experimental machines designed to demonstrate never-before-seen technology. And you used those deceptive machines to trick the government and private investors into giving you money. Professor Albert Hairbrain was just your latest victim, wasn't he? Whatever are you talking about? I have no recollection of doing anything of the sort. What's Drebber up to? Why would he suddenly change his tune and recant his claim? I wonder if perhaps it's because his circumstances have changed now. What circumstances? Well, if he admits to having seen the Professor emerging alive from his grave 10 years ago, it will expose a secret in Dr. Scythe's past that she would desperately want to hide. Yes, of course! If Drebber and Dr. Scythe are working together now, then if Drebber were to betray her, there'd be no reason for her to continue to cooperate. In that case, there's only one way around it. To prove he really did see it. Yeah, we've just got to get one of them to roll on the other one, right? Prove he really did see the Professor's corpse coming back from the dead as he originally claimed. Yes, Mr. Naruhodo, exactly! Okay. This one. Right, we're presenting the camera.
Objection!
The defense would have to object to that last statement, my lord. Apparently this is incorrect. Okay. I was so sure we had it. I don't think there's anything else we can sort of look at here. I do want to extend this again, just quickly. Yeah, we can't really look at this again. There isn't anything... It's just going to be the same as before. And opening the back just gets us the thing from before as well. Oh, okay, wait, this is a different sentence. Yes, that's right. Isn't this incredible to think that this is the actual camera Mr. Drebber used that night? I certainly never imagined a piece of evidence would be on display in Madame Two-Spells. She's very keen on everything being as true to life as possible, though, isn't she? Okay. That doesn't seem to help us, though. It's what we need. Yeah, I don't think it says anything about the camera in the article. So is it something else we need to present to? The illustration was based on what you witnessed that night. Gave it up on my dream of becoming a scientist all because of that newspaper article. What if I present the newspaper article on this one and go, that was... The reporter at that time was Mr. Asman, and I don't know if it'll come up like that. No, we've definitely been told this is what we need to do it to. I never actually saw the professor at all, though. Is there something in the article? I mean... But isn't this based on what he saw? This description? Wait, is that... Oh! The mask is on the actual professor. It's not just something that was added to the waxwork to make it... Yeah. Yeah, actually, because Two-Spells said that she had to remove that mask, didn't she? So that means that the mask was on the actual corpse. Yes, it's not just a thing to make the waxwork more anonymous. So in that case, he wouldn't have been able to describe this mask if he hadn't actually seen it, right? And also, this is the only other thing of relevance to put to this thing, so...
Objection!
Sorry, Mr. Drebber, but I don't believe that. Don't believe what? Your latest claim. You did see the professor on that night 10 years ago. Oh dear, we seem to be at odds, but I was there, and you were not. I know what I didn't see. The illustration with this article was drawn based upon what you told the journalist that you witnessed. A figure emerging from a tomb, wearing an iron mask. Yes, when the killer was tried 10 years ago, it was decided in the closed court's ruling that the man would wear the mask to hide his identity. Oh, he had the mask on for the court proceedings too. So there's not a lot of people that know what this guy's face actually looked like, is there? It wasn't to be removed even during his execution and subsequent burial. Not even the prison wardens were to see the man's face. But obviously the provision of this mask was not public knowledge. So, Mr. Drebber, as you've just heard, a lowly student at the University of London certainly wouldn't have known about the condemned man's mask. So unless you'd actually seen the professor that night, it's inconceivable that the artist would have included the mask in that illustration. Yeah! Order, order! Well, Mr. Drebber. It's a vile scene, isn't it? If you look closely. And as I've already been at pains to point out, I was utterly petrified. Which is why I had it in my head that I'd seen such a blood-curdling sight. But afterwards I came to my senses and realised that I'd been mistaken. You're still saying that you didn't see it? After the way you reacted when I proved that you had? If you're stubbornly sticking to that story, witness, then amend your testimony to explain exactly how you think your eyes deceived you. Of course, only too happy to oblige. I can't believe you're still not going to concede the point. What I in fact witnessed was a fellow grave robber at work. Alright. A fellow grave robber. What are you talking about? Well, I wasn't the only one busy in the cemetery that night, you know. Other body snatchers were at work. Of course, when I saw one emerging from the hole he'd dug, my heart very nearly stopped. So that's the terrifying sight I actually saw, you see. You're claiming it was just another student on equally insalubrious business as yourself? Many of the medical students would wear metal masks to protect them from bacteria during dissections. Clearly the fellow was using such a mask to protect his anonymity, wouldn't you say? I mean, I guess that's a possibility.
Objection!
But there's more to the story, isn't there? The article goes on to say, in the next second a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled once more. Yeah, metal masks don't seem too likely. Like something with leather, maybe. Because the Plague Doctor masks and things are like leather, aren't they? Weren't they even? We might assume that the sexton discovered the miscreants at work, perhaps, and fired upon one of them. If a gravedigger had shot someone in the cemetery, I think that would have been rather big news, my lord. Ah, yes, well, I can only assume it was an embellishment bolted on later by the reporter. I want to go through what the rest of what he's saying and come back round and do that pursue. An embellishment? As I explained earlier, most of what the papers published about those events was fabricated nonsense. The journalists had a great time fashioning it into a horrifying ghost story. Yes, exactly, Nick. Exactly. The fragrant flowers and herbs. Because it was miasma theory, right? For sickness. The theory that it was bad air that caused sicknesses, and therefore if they sort of, I don't know, made the air better. I don't know. So now you're saying there was no gunshot? That's right, yes, I'm afraid so. Ugh. I mistakenly thought I'd seen a corpse coming back to life and then fled the scene. That's really all that happened. Okay, let's go back through that again.
Hold it! Objection!
Okay. So what you got for me, two spells?
Excuse me.
Madame Two Spells. Don't take it out on Mr. Sholmes. You're right, he is getting stabbed a lot. Ooh la la, pardon. I was lost in my thoughts. Would it be fair to say that Mr. Drebber's last remark was significant to you in some way? I thought it was a little strange, that is all. How Monsieur Drebber could claim this now. If you don't mind me saying, madame, what are you talking about? Well, when I met you 10 years ago at your university dormitory, you recounted to me about your adventures in the cemetery, no? Including the gunshot. Stop. You might want to watch your tongue, you know.
Objection!
Have a care, Drebber. That's no way to speak to a lady. Grr. Please, Madame Two Spells, carry on. Of course. According to what Monsieur Drebber told me at the time, he did hear a gunshot from behind him, and the bullet hit the condemned man. I said nothing of the sort. No, you were very explicit about the details. About the mask that the figure was wearing, and the blood that splattered over you when he was shot. I was right! I was right! The blood on the camera is the professor's blood! Enough! Shut up, woman! You're making all this up. That will do! Mr. Drebber. Yes? You refute the account just given by Madame Two Spells. I have no recollection of ever saying those things. Come on, do you really expect us to believe you? Control yourself, counsel. I will not permit baseless accusations in my courtroom. Right. Under the circumstances, I think it best that you supplement your testimony with a statement to clarify your position on this witness. But very well. There was no gunshot from behind me at all, nor any spattering blood. Well, we're going to press it first. Yet Madame Tusfells has testified that you told her about both of those details. Not true. I said nothing of the sort. 10 years have passed. Without material evidence to the contrary, you have no grounds on which to question the witness's word. Yeah. Tell me, Madame Tusfells. Oui? What exactly did Mr. Drebber say about the blood that apparently spattered on him? Alors, this is what he told me. All of a sudden, he heard a very loud gunshot from behind his back. The bullet hit the figure who was emerging from the tomb in the middle of the chest, in his heart. One dreadful sight after another. And since Monsieur Drebber was at that time facing towards the condemned man, the blood sprayed from the wound and spattered on his body. That is what he told me. So, not an experience you would ever forget, is it? Precisely, and I didn't forget it, because, as I've already said, it never happened in the first place. He's clearly lying. If only I had some evidence to prove it. We can't let him win, Mr. Naruhodo. We mustn't overlook a single detail, no matter how small. Anyway. I can prove the blood, Mr. Drebber.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you remember this camera? But that is the camera from that fateful night. Yes, we borrowed it from the House of Horrors. It's the camera you took with you to the cemetery that night, Mr. Drebber. And is that supposed to be significant? This kind of camera is rarely seen in our homeland, so my colleague and I were keen to examine it closely. We noticed that the lens extends forward on the end of some bellows. Like this.
Hold it!
What's that? There, just on the bellows. It looks like a dark red stain. Ah! That's right. It's a rather conspicuous mark here on the bellows, in fact. Good lord, are you suggesting? Yes, my lord, it would appear to be a spatter of blood. Something that could be confirmed with a simple chemical test. Isn't that right, Dr. Scythe? It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood and not the blood of some animal. But yes, to test whether or not it's blood at all is simple enough. I propose that Madame Tusfel's testimony was correct, and that on the night in question 10 years ago, you were spattered with blood from the gunshot wound. Well, and that furthermore, you really did witness the condemned professor emerging from his tomb. Yeah! There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you're trying to hide the fact that you saw the professor that night.
Objection!
But why? Why would he want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. For whose, then? For who could benefit? Mr. Drebber is obviously lying in order to protect somebody. My goodness, he's shielding someone? Yes, my lord, and clearly it's someone who doesn't want the truth about the professor coming back to life to be exposed. Well, Counsel, who is it then? Who is this witness trying to protect by lying about what he saw that night? Where are you, Scythe? There you are. Hey, how old is Drebber? Okay, Drebber's 4 years younger.
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Scythe. Scythe? Whatever do you mean? Imagine if the convict who'd been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine if that were to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine if the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer. If it was the professor. That would be an unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
This is beyond a joke. Need I point out that the dead cannot come back to life? What you're suggesting would mean that the execution never actually happened. Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
Objection!
Once a man is sent to the gallows, he hangs. No one could escape, not in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging. If that were really true, Counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at the surviving coroner. Not surviving, was it? It was supervising coroner. It would taint the honour of the entire judiciary from the ground up. And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Scythe would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose her secret. Even if that meant being complicit in a crime. You mean... I mean that Dr. Scythe wasn't collaborating in Dr. Drebber's wicked scheme. She was coerced into collaborating, in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Asman with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Yeah! Van Zeeks, feet off the furniture. Lord Van Zeeks. Pray forgive my freshly filled hallowed chalice, and a whole raft of other discourtesies now. Yeah, like putting your feet up on the bar. Goodness me. It's just the sort of tall tale Londoners would enjoy, I grant you. An executed killer rising from the dead, a Scotland Yard cover-up, a conspiracy at the highest levels. So let me ask you one thing. What's that? If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger and disposed of him forever? Well, I have no idea at the moment. We have too little information to work that out at present, I think. I couldn't agree more. The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies. And have you considered this, my learned Nipponese friend? Considered what? Do you realize just what a dangerous endeavour it would be to coerce this woman into such criminal activity? It's tantamount to declaring war on the entire British police force and judiciary. Quite hard to imagine any sum of money being offered for research could warrant it. To rely on some stage deception when so much is at stake would be madness. Well, I suppose... And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who'd already invested money in the venture and would be instrumental in future profits too. Yes, I had no reason to kill Mr. Asman at all. You had all the reason in the world, Trevor. Or are you forgetting that his death results in me not receiving... Are you forgetting that his death results in me not receiving... No, me receiving not a single penny? The court is already aware of the contract between myself and the victim, no? Yeah, the contract that gives you motive for murder. There is the contract, it's very true. The motive for this case runs deep, though. I can feel it. It's not about the money, it's about sending a message. Exactly. Well, it's about revenge. Pure and simple. Using threats to force the head of the forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme. Especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place. If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Asman's life would have made no sense anyway. Which means, Mr. Drebber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Asman. But why? What was his motive then? Your time is up, my learned friend. I'd say you have one last chance before the jury lose their patience with this charade. Let's see if you can back up your heady proposal, shall we? How do you explain why this engineer would throw all caution to the wind and threaten his own country? At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to any more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence. Alright, who exactly was Mr. Asman to Drebber? There's a connection there that no one's seen yet. I've seen it. And I'm going to have to present 2 pieces of evidence to show what it is. Yes, my lord. The evidence that establishes a motive and explains why the witness wanted the victim dead is right here, starting with the 10-year-old article.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord. And that was written 10 years ago, and every detail has been examined already. What can it possibly tell us? That drivel should never have been written. It's typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing. Yes, on its own, it isn't particularly significant. However, when considered alongside another piece of evidence, it will completely explain your motive for wanting Mr. Asman dead. What other evidence? Counsel, you will present your supplementary evidence without delay. The evidence, which when cross-referenced with the newspaper article, establishes a motive for the deed. The contract.
Take that!
It's this contract, my lord. Mr. Drebber, this is the contract you signed with Mr. Asman. Yes, that's right. The very document, in fact. That proves I had no reason to kill the man. Actually, it proves you had every reason to kill the man. No, I'm afraid not. What? There's something very significant that this newspaper article and contract have in common. Really? And it's that common link that shows very clearly why you were determined to kill Mr. Asman. It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these 2 pieces of evidence have in common. Where exactly is the link between this newspaper article and the contract? Do.
Take that!
What these 2 pieces of evidence have in common is a signature. A signature? The signature on the illustration that accompanies the 10-year-old article and the signature on the contract belong to the same person. What? Yeah! As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about his ordeal. Yes, I deduced a while ago, did I not, Nick? For I, not Sherlock Holmes, am the great detective. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen in the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed by the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Asman's signature at the bottom. Let me see now. Good lord, yes, they're identical. In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. Odie Asman. Ooh, he's all the way on the floor.
Objection!
But explain to the court why. Why would that constitute a motive for the witness to murder Asman? Because Asman ruined his life. Well, if you think back, you'll remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. At the time, you were a student at the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life. So Mr. Asman used to be a newspaper journalist, did he? He did, my lord. In fact, it's a widely held belief that Asman managed to position himself at the heart of his criminal network, thanks to the many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter. So you had to give up on your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. And all because of that article, written by Mr. Asman. Enough! Stop this endless drivel about my life. What? Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber. Yes, it's true. I had to leave the university as a result of that article. But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research. But they struggled on with their hypotheses anyway. We all did, only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other after all. Good gracious! Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses, so it was hardly a wrench. Being forced out of the university because of Logate was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do. Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? We have evidence to prove that you have a talent for science, sir. I'm sorry to say your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? And I have evidence to prove it. How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. Fine, if you think you have evidence, go ahead. Show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave university because I lacked talent?
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found it at your workshop. Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? What exactly is this trophy, Council? It's the greatest honour that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There is no higher accolade. It recognises emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious! Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Drebber? Because even then you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future. Your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realised who Mr. Asman was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life, it's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. The truth is... finally he's going to fold. He's probably not, right? Doctor. Fine. Clearly this has run its course now. What? I admit it. All of it. Yes! What? What are you doing? It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim. Oh, was OBS causing a problem? It's not showing any particular issues. Is the sound okay now? And which sound? My sound or the game's sound? On the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago. It was the holder, was it? No. Good Lord! Dr. Scythe, do you realise what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day, when I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the birdcage, My heart nearly stopped beating. Oh, it did have its head on when it fell, huh? That memory from a decade ago that I'd done my best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. A letter, by the looks of it. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Scythe, you will go along with my plan. From someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night 10 years ago. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Why on earth would you buckle now? Because she's trying for a she doesn't want to be she doesn't want the court to find her guilty of being an accessory to murder. She wants to paint herself as a victim here. Well, there's no point in trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborate in a murder. But the great lie about that execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. So whatever happened, I'm finished, so I'm taking you down with me. Yeah, in this particular case, she is a victim. So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything. Surely it goes without saying. You admit your part in it too, then? I admit nothing. At all. What? Have you forgotten that the kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting a crime, there's really no possible way for you to prove I did anything wrong. No! Well, that's fine, because we're not here to prove you did anything wrong. We're here to prove that our defendant didn't, but you know. Order, order, order! Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Van Zieks. Yes? I hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course. I have heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper forum with which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber. The defendant is Professor Albert Harebrain. Very true. It had slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends? Yeah, but once the professor came into it, everything other than the professor just left Van Zieks' brain entirely. As the court has heard, Dr. Scythe has admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt. You mean... At the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Does the prosecution have any objection? None, my lord. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo! You've proven Professor Harebrain's innocence! Without further ado, then, the adjudication. Unless the prosecution or defense have any other matters to discuss. We do. It didn't Sholmes say that we should pursue the truth by any means necessary? I don't know, this doesn't feel quite right. Why did Dr. Scythe suddenly admit to it like that? Because she doesn't want the full truth of what happened 10 years ago coming out. And if the case continued, it might have done. Is everything alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Like you said before, the way the trial is set to end now, the judge will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? What the defense should be pushing for now is... further testimony. Pursue it like a dog with a bone, as Sholmes said.
Objection!
The defense objects to the trial ending at this time, my lord. I beg your pardon. We demand one final testimony. What? You do realize I'm about to adjudicate in favor of your client, I presume? What are you playing at now, my Nipponese friend? I'm playing at being your friend, Van Zieks. Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? I'm trying to get closure for you, mate. No defense lawyer in his right mind would do that. Mr. Naruhodo, what exactly are you thinking? The truth. The whole truth. And a way to bring it all out into the open. Right. Yes, in hindsight. Ah, yes. One word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. Who says we're in our right mind, exactly? To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. I'm sure Mr. Sholmes knew. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client, and to secure an acquittal. Obviously. But that's not all. I believe that I have a duty to the court to pursue the whole truth of the case until every last detail is laid bare. And that is why the defense calls for further testimony from Dr. Scythe. Testimony from me? About what? About the nature of your collaboration with Mr. Enoch Drewer. In case it's escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did. The whole truth has already been revealed. So stop wasting everyone's time. Yeah. As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There's simply no point protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection!
Oh, goodbye, bottle. Pray forgive my careless handling of that hallowed bottle. I slipped. That's what you call it? What is your objection, Lord Van Zeeks? The prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness. Don't be stupid! If there is more to this case than has yet come to light, then I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end. You'll what? Lord Van Zeeks. This is most irregular, to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Dr. Side, you will testify for the court, explaining the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber. And I think, looking at the time and judging by my voice, that testimony will have to wait for next time. A little bit of a cliffhanger there for you. So, thank you very much for coming. It's been fun. If you're new here and you've enjoyed your time, please consider subscribing to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is where the stream schedule for the week is posted, although this is the last scheduled stream for the week, so then the new schedule will be up either later today or tomorrow. The next stream will be Monday, 7 PM BST, and that is going to be the start of the Phantom Bride event in Twisted Wonderland. So I hope to see you then or another time. And once again, thanks for coming. This is Kalla, signing out. See ya, bye bye.